in Mississippi's capital city trying to get bottled water. There's a crisis in Jackson right now caused by a near total loss of water pressure after a major pump was damaged at a water treatment facility. There's no indication of when it will return to normal. We talked to the city's mayor about how it got this far and what's being done to make sure this doesn't happen again. An investigation into what could be the first monkeypox-related death in the U.S. Health officials say the person tested positive for the virus and was also severely immunocompromised. As cases rise, we're getting an exclusive first look inside a U.S. plant used to produce the vaccine. Stepping up strikes. Ukraine is hitting Russian targets in the south. The Kremlin says it suffered heavy losses and civilian injuries. As the fighting takes a turn, nuclear inspectors are headed to Europe's largest power plant amid fears of a possible disaster. Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of the Soviet Union, has died. He implemented radical reforms and tore through the Iron Curtain between the USSR and the West. The lasting legacy his decisions left behind. The teenager accusing a former Buffalo Bills player of rape is now speaking to ABC News. Matt Ariza was cut from the team's roster after the allegations surfaced. What the accuser is saying about the alleged incident and the new response from Ariza's family. A year after the U.S. ended its longest war, there are many changes in Afghanistan. Women and girls now attending secret schools, many even hiding it from their parents. Ian Panel shows us where things stand.
Do you feel abandoned by the world? Do you think the women and the girls of Afghanistan have been left behind?
Sure, yes.
The war in Ukraine has caused major disruptions to some of its biggest exports. But it's also created an opportunity for U.S. farmers now producing a crop that's in high demand and fueling much-needed growth for their business. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Kana Whitworth. I'm here in Los Angeles in for Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. And tonight, we are learning more about the emergency unfolding in Mississippi's largest city. Roughly 160,000 people are currently without water for drinking and other critical needs for a second day. City and state leaders unable to provide clear answers as to how long this will last. We have dramatic video of the desperation as people are lined up in cars waiting to collect water from distribution centers before they run out. Jackson's water system has been plagued with problems for years. In fact, a boil water notice had been in effect since last month. But the recent flooding dropped water pressure to a trickle. And what's coming out of the taps throughout the city may be contaminated. And tonight, the mayor of Jackson says this is an environmental justice issue impacting his mostly black residents. Now, the mayor is standing by to talk with us. But first, our Trevor Alt is there with the latest.
Tonight, families in Mississippi's capital city are scrambling for the most basic human necessity, clean water. Overnight, Governor Tate Reeves announcing a key water treatment plant is on the verge of total collapse.
It means the city cannot produce enough water to fight fires, to reliably flush toilets, and to meet other critical needs.
Today, cars lining up for hours at water distribution sites. We met Cora Williams. She told us she needs water for herself and her 2 grandchildren.
Can you keep living like this?
No.
What do you want them to do?
Fix it. Fix everything. There's water, fix the streets, everything. They need to fix it.
Jackson residents have been under boil water notices since last month when water samples found harmful contaminant levels. Water emergency on the heels of last week's flash flood emergency, parts of the Jackson area receiving historic rainfall.
This is a set of accumulated problems based on deferred maintenance that has not taken place over decades.
And Trevor Alt is joining us now. So, Trevor, you're there at a water distribution center right now. What's happening?
Well, Kana, essentially we just keep watching these lines grow larger and larger. So this distribution site is filling up with people here. It's a parking lot basically of a shopping center, but it snakes around through. There's several different lines that's a little disorganized, and then it goes out on the streets and stretches as far as you can see. And here they're waiting on water that's now more than a half hour late. The one we were at earlier, extremely well organized. They had 600 cases of water. They gave out 1 per vehicle. It took them an hour and a half to go all the way through. And when they ran out, you could still see in the distance a line of cars about a half a mile long. It is impossible to overstate the need for water right now in Jackson. Kana.
Wow, that means people are waiting for water and not getting it in some cases. Trevor, our thanks to you.
Yeah.
And joining me now is the mayor of Jackson, Chokwe Lumumba. Mayor, first off, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us during such a challenging time for you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for lifting up the challenges that my community is suffering from.
Of course. So now that a state of emergency has been declared, what is your first order of business here with these funds to help your community?
Well, first, let me reiterate, that we were excited and we welcome this support with open arms. We feel like we've been going it alone for the better part of 2 years, lifting up the fact that these are challenges that, first and foremost, are beyond partisan. These are human rights challenges. And so we've been saying that it's not a matter of if our systems would fail, but when our systems fail, and we've seen it far too frequently. So we've talked with the State Department of Health and MEMA, who have assured us that they're going to have boots on the ground to help supplement our staffing needs and the critical repairs. They have committed to approximately 50% of the cost of the repairs in a shorter time frame to get to those contracts due to the fact that it's under an emergency condition.
And so, Mayor, spell it out for us. How did we get here? How did we get to this point?
Yeah. This is due to decades and decades of possibly 30 years or more of deferred maintenance, a lack of capital improvements made to the system, a lack of a human capital or workforce plan that accounted for the challenges that our water treatment facility suffers from. We've had hotter summers, colder winters, and more precipitation each year, and it's taking a toll on our infrastructure. And so we need the support to not only create sustainability and equity in our system, but to also weatherize our system.
A major overhaul, certainly. And Mayor, water has been a crisis in your city for some time now. In fact, in November of last year, our congressional correspondent Rachel Scott went to Jackson and reported on an elementary there that had no water. The kids had to use porta potties. They also had no water at home. You were interviewed at that time, and this is a sentiment that you've already reiterated this evening, that it's not a matter of if these systems will fail, but rather when these systems will fail. And as unfortunately what we're seeing right now, you were right. But previous to this, how high up have you taken your concerns? And do you feel that anyone was receptive to the gravity of the situation?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I believe that the moment in which you're recounting, I believe that the administrator of the EPA was with me, and he was looking at the concerns of our water distribution system, touring a school, and was scheduled for that tour, the school to have to redirect its students to another location due to the persistent water challenges. This is something that we don't only suffer from citywide, but more precisely and equitably, we suffer in the southern portion of our city, most disproportionately. And so it's something that we not only need to create sustainability, but equity, realizing that some of the most impoverished parts of our city are feeling the brunt of this challenge more consistently and worse off than the rest of our city. And so this is something that, I believe we have to continue to ring the alarm around. Something that we have to continue to call on all levels that have responsibility.
And make sure those dollars go where they need to go. And you've said Jackson in some ways is a poster child for a community that suffers from environmental justice issues. So tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Well, just as we review the EPA's Justice 40 initiative, when it talks about income disparities and the diversity of communities that it had in mind. Jackson is the, primary example of a community that fits and checks all of the boxes of those initiatives. When we talk about the fact that we've had great disparity in the funding of the resources in Jackson compared to other portions of our state over generations, I think that it is time that we represent a new model, that we represent a new day, and we demonstrate from the city level to the state level and beyond that we're all, on board trying to make certain that residents, that human beings don't have to deal with the challenge of not having the basic resource of water.
Right. And water really is a statewide issue there. What is your message to other mayors who could be facing similar challenges here?
Well, I would say that as we have dealt with these persistent challenges, we know just how dehumanizing this can be. We know how humiliating it can be. And so, as we push forward for, a better Jackson, a better state, a better nation, we need to push for a dignity economy, which reflects the sustainable development goals that give people dignity, that reveals a better quality of life for them each and every day.
Sure. And I know right now we don't have a timeline for when this will be fixed. So how can people around the country that might be watching right now, how can they help?
Well, I would encourage them to, reach out to the city. They can do so through our website, www.jacksonms.gov, through our Constituent Services Division. If they look to provide water donations, if they can help, just lift up to those in leadership that support.
Okay, certainly a little highlight there. Mayor Chokwe Lumumba, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And next to the latest round of strong storms, they're firing up tonight, targeting millions in the Northeast with heavy rain and high winds after slamming the Midwest. Senior meteorologist Rob Marciano is tracking it all for us. Hey, Rob.
Hey, Kana, this has proved to be a very dangerous line of storms. We saw yesterday fatalities with this, over 200 damaging storm reports, and still very, very potent tonight. The winds are picking up here around New York City, and upstate New York on the radar is a bit of a mess. You can see it here. Lots of storms from central New York, Ithaca, east towards the Capital District, and eastern Pennsylvania, heading across the Delaware into New Jersey as well, as it crosses the I-95 corridor later on this evening and tonight. New York up through Bridgeport, Hartford. They will weaken eventually into Boston, but overnight tonight we could see 50, 60 mile per hour winds with these this line of storms. Much more quiet and less humid tomorrow. Meanwhile, in the west, beginning tomorrow, excessive heat warnings and watches up and down California. We could see some record highs, not just tomorrow, but it looks like this heat wave is going to be a dangerous one and a long one. Looks to be lasting through the holiday weekend. All right, we're getting into primetime hurricane season. As you know, it's been very, very quiet the past 2 months. Is that streak going to continue? Unlikely. 80% chance of that storm in the central Atlantic, and this one coming off Africa has a decent chance of developing a new tropical cyclone, potentially a named storm. But at this point, neither one of those looks to be making a line towards the U.S. Let's hope our luck continues as we head into September. Kana?
Okay, Rob, our thanks to you. And now to Texas, where a man diagnosed with monkeypox has died, potentially marking the first monkeypox-related death in the United States. State officials add that the man was severely immunocompromised. And now, with more than 18,000 reported cases in the country, where do we stand on vaccines and who should be getting one? Our Maria Villarreal reports.
Tonight, the first reported death of an American with monkeypox. Officials say the patient was a severely immunocompromised adult who died at a Houston area hospital.
This patient also had underlying health conditions and had a number of things going on, and I think that additional investigation is needed to know what role monkeypox may or may not have played in their deaths.
The CDC today stressing that death from monkeypox is rare. Of the nearly 50,000 cases around the world, just 15 have been fatal. The vast majority of U.S. infections have been in men who have sex with other men, but at least 31 children have also contracted monkeypox, including an infant who was exposed to the virus by a family member and treated at a Seattle hospital.
The main thing that the patient was experiencing was the rash and complications of the rash.
And Maria Villarreal is joining us now. So, Maria, what do we know about how monkeypox has spread to children?
Well, you know, Kate, as of right now, there is no evidence that suggests that children are seeing transmission within the schools so far. Here in Texas, there are 9 pediatric cases being reported, and the CDC, though, is warning that there is preliminary evidence suggesting that in kids under the age of 8, the illness could be more severe. Kana?
Oh, wow, certainly something to keep our eye out for. Maria, thank you. And overseas now, specifically to the Arabian Sea, where the U.S. Navy reports that they caught an Iranian military ship trying to make off with a high-tech U.S. maritime drone in the middle of the night. So how did the U.S. Fifth Fleet step in to stop them? Here's ABC's chief global affairs anchor, Martha Raddatz.
The Iranian military vessel had the American drone in its clutches, latching on and towing it through the waters of the Arabian Gulf. The captured Sea Drone Explorer is an unarmed, unmanned vessel equipped with sensors, radar, and cameras to collect data. And once the U.S. Navy saw Iran was trying to steal it, their response was quick. The USS Thunderbolt, you can see it here, was operating nearby and quickly moved in, approaching the Iranian ship, nearly pulling up alongside it. The standoff lasted hours until the Iranians finally disconnected the tow line, releasing the drone. Tonight, the Navy calling Iran's actions flagrant and unwarranted.
And Martha Raddatz is joining us now from Washington. So, Martha, this comes amid negotiations between the U.S. and Iran to restore the nuclear deal. What role could that have possibly played in today's incident?
Well, we're frankly uncertain, but while it was an Iranian ship commander who likely made the decision to seize that drone, the Iranians are in those nuclear negotiations, and clearly whoever was making the decision to release the drone did not want the situation to escalate further, but it was a very provocative move to take it in the first place, Kana.
Certainly. And also, Martha, we're learning late tonight here that the Army is now grounding its entire fleet of Chinook helicopters. What are you hearing about that?
That's 400 helicopters, and there have been no injuries or deaths from these small engine fires in a small number of these helicopters, but they've now found the root cause of the problem, and they're grounding all of them out of an abundance of caution until they can be fixed. Kana.
Okay, Martha, our thanks to you. And now tonight, in day 2 of the Ukrainian counteroffensive, President Zelensky is giving the Russians 2 choices: flee or surrender. Meanwhile, families living near a massive nuclear power plant continue to evacuate. ABC's Tom Sufi-Burridge has the latest from Zaporizhzhia.
Tonight, dramatic new images of smoke rising over southern Ukraine. Videos circulating online illustrating this major new counteroffensive. Ukrainian forces stepping up strikes on Russian targets across Kherson, a key city in the Ukrainians' new push to recapture Russian-occupied territory. Tonight, President Zelensky with a new message for the Russians, saying this is Ukrainian land, adding occupiers can flee or surrender. We leave them no other options. The fighting sparking a new exodus, families desperate to escape.
We're at the main evacuation centre in Ukrainian-controlled territory, not far from Kherson. Many of these families have left this morning. They say the fighting was getting louder, their fear more intense, and they had to get out.
We met Zhenya and Olya, fleeing Kherson with their 3 kids.
You feared for your lives? You wanted to get out?
Well, I didn't fear for my life, but I really fear about life of my children.
Zelensky today meeting 2 U.S. senators, Democrat Amy Klobuchar and Republican Rob Portman, who vowed continued U.S. support. And the president also face-to-face with a team of nuclear experts from the UN. They will now try and reach that nuclear power plant in Zaporizhzhia.
And Tom Sufi-Burridge is joining us now. So, Tom, this new offensive from Ukraine really only been playing out for about 24 hours. So is it too early to tell if the country's making gains yet?
Yeah, absolutely, Kana. The Ukrainians have been laying the groundwork for this offensive for some time. It's a bold move, but it's a gamble. And with the Russians dug in for months in that region, any offensive is likely to move slowly and could come at a heavy cost. Kana?
Okay, Tom, our thanks to you. And turning now to the search of former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. The former president has asked a judge to appoint this independent observer. It's known as a special master to comb through the seized documents for privileged information. So as we bring in our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas. Pierre, the judge gave the Justice Department until midnight tonight to file their response. So what's the latest?
Kana, the clock is ticking for the Justice Department to meet that midnight deadline. We've learned they're preparing an extensive response to Trump's request for a special master. DOJ insists they've essentially done the work of a special master themselves, going through the documents seized at Mar-a-Lago and setting aside, quote, a limited set of materials that potentially contain attorney-client privilege. And Kana, if the judge does ultimately decide to appoint a special master, that won't erase the fact that the FBI seized 11 sets of highly classified information from the former president's home. And that's on top of 184 classified documents Team Trump turned over in January. That's the focus, Kana, and it's not going to change.
Certainly a lot to be unearthed. Our Pierre Thomas, thank you so much. And also tonight, we are now hearing from the teen who is accusing former Buffalo Bills player Matt Araiza of raping her. She says it happened at a party when she was 17 years old. ABC's Eva Pilgrim reports.
Tonight, the teen who alleges former Buffalo Bills punter Matt Araiza raped her at a Halloween house party, demanding justice just days after he was cut from the team's roster.
I want charges to be filed, and I want arrests to be made. Matt being cut from the team was a small win, but I don't think that is an appropriate consequence for the horrible things that were done to me that night.
The alleged victim speaking to ABC News asking we not show her face or use her name. She filed a civil lawsuit last week accusing Araiza, along with 2 former teammates, of raping her at an off-campus party when the 3 were football players at San Diego State University last fall.
I was so scared. I felt like these huge men, I wouldn't have been able to do anything to them.
The teen says she was 17 and observably intoxicated when the assault happened.
Just because I was at a party drinking does not mean that they get away with it.
Araiza and his 2 former teammates have denied the allegations of rape. Araiza's parents releasing a statement saying the rule of law is innocent until proven guilty. That is not our experience. We have all been canceled. Every member of our family. Salacious rumors grew as fact.
And our thanks to Eva Pilgrim for that report. Also tonight, Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of the Soviet Union, has died. He helped end the Cold War and the threat of nuclear war. World News Tonight anchor David Muir shares his final request.
Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of the Soviet Union, rising to power after 7 decades of communist rule. He helped end the Cold War. Breaking the mold of the Soviet leaders before him, he was outgoing, charming those he met. Heads of state, Fidel Castro, Margaret Thatcher, Pope John Paul II. The image of him with then President Reagan and Vice President George Bush, the Twin Towers in the background. Here, driving President Bush in the golf cart at Camp David. Born in 1931, working with his father on the farm, becoming a member of the Communist Party in 1952, where he would rise through the ranks. President Reagan at the Berlin Wall in June of 1987 at his famous speech.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
It was just 6 months later at the White House, the 2 leaders together, signing the INF Treaty. The 2 joking, and President Reagan and those words, trust but verify.
We have listened to the wisdom in an old Russian maxim. Though my pronunciation may give you difficulty, the maxim is doverяй no проверяй, trust but verify.
Назначение этого... На каждой встрече вы это повторяете. You repeat that at every meeting.
Gorbachev was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1990. Tonight, Russia's state news agencies announcing Gorbachev's death at the age of 91. He asked to be buried next to his wife.
And our thanks to David Muir for that report. And when we come back here tonight, video capturing the moment a rescue crew used a helicopter to save 2 hikers during a medical emergency. Also, a Duke volleyball player opening up about the moment she says a spectator yelled racist taunts at her during a game. But up next, it's been 1 year since the last U.S. military personnel pulled out of Afghanistan. For the women in Afghanistan, it's been 1 year of dreams deferred or squashed. Our in-depth look next.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
in Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
Here at the White House.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
You're along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go. We made it.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Bring them on.
If only there was a place in the morning to start my day. With a smile, somewhere to help me get in the know. A place as spectacular as, well, me.
I think we might know a place, right, guys?
Bring your friends. Oh, wait, there is.
Good morning, America.
GMA, 7A, every day. Boom, boom, boom.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Robin. Good morning, America. How are you?
Boom! Now that's how you start your day, people.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
How cute.
Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
As of today, in a big way, we have inaugurated abcnews.com.
A lot has changed in our world since Peter made that announcement. But what hasn't changed is the commitment to groundbreaking reporting and innovation at abcnews.com. And here's to everything ahead.
This is ABC News Live Prime.
Thanks so much for streaming with us.
Live reporting, breaking news, exclusives, award-winning, powerful, eye-opening. ABC News Live Prime with Lindsay Davis. Streaming weeknights. Right now, with so much at stake, Sunday mornings, this is the place. Taking on the tough questions with straightforward reporting. Thank you for making ABC's This Week with George the #1 Sunday morning news show versus the competition.
Welcome to This Week.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
It was an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcast.
And welcome back. Look at this dramatic rescue in Florida. It all unfolded after a hiker's companion experienced a medical emergency in the middle of Big Cypress Preserve. So sheriff's deputies found the pair in the swamp. They hoisted them to safety. Both were taken in for medical evaluations by paramedics. Wow. Last year, the final U.S. personnel pulled out of Afghanistan, ending the longest war in American history. The Taliban promised to respect all its citizens, particularly women, in those early days, but we have been documenting the reality on the ground for the last 12 months. Instead, it is one of broken dreams and lost opportunity. ABC's chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell, brings us a preview of his powerful new special that debuts tonight, The Women Left Behind.
Forging hope out of hate. Turning spent bullet casings into jewelry. It takes days to transform objects of death into desired objects. But for some 350 women and girls, it's a lifeline to a world that's vanished. In a country plagued by 4 decades of war, this is a true labor of love. A small island of hope in a sea of despair. It's been 1 year since the last US troops left Afghanistan, ending America's longest war. And in a flash, the glittering dreams of a better life, the promises of progress and a more liberal order vanished, replaced by resignation and lingering sadness. Particularly for the young girls and women of Afghanistan.
Hello, hello, hello.
Layla Hydery is a force of nature.
How are you?
She's running a training centre where women learn English and trades like jewellery and sewing. But it all has to be well hidden behind closed doors.
Where did you get the idea of turning bullets
into jewelry?
رنج آدم‌ها رو وادار می‌کنه به فکر کردن، به اینکه تو همیشه به گلوله فکر می‌کنی، به مرمی فکر می‌کنی، به جنگ فکر می‌کنی. جنگی که بیش از 40 ساله که در افغانستان جریان داره. 40 سال. به زمان کمی نیست.
In just 1 year, women and girls have been all but erased from public life. Despite promises to the contrary, the Taliban banned secondary education for girls. The country's leader, Hibatullah Akhundzada, ruling that women couldn't appear outside unless fully covered, even advising that the best hijab is the home.
This is our third time in Kabul in a year, and what changes this country has seen. Some of them are just small, little things you noticed. Before, there was graffiti there, but there were also street art representing the women, the girls of Afghanistan. The hope, the optimism for the future has just evaporated.
Women across the country have been telling us what life has become. Their faces hidden, recorded in secret, but made so that their voices would not be silenced, so that the world will at least hear them.
I have to bury all my books because I am afraid of Taliban finding those books and punishing me for those.
To protect their identities, they remain anonymous, afraid of retaliation.
Isn't it my right to choose my clothes? Do I not have the right to education and improve like other young people in other countries?
Hope is dwindling for many women and girls in Afghanistan. Stripped of their rights and under the ever-present threat of violence, many struggle to continue their day-to-day lives. For Layla, yes, she's back on her feet, helping and inspiring other women in this training school. But she says life is now like a prison. This is the reality for the women and girls of Afghanistan.
How are you staying positive, given everything that's happening in Afghanistan today?
که از یک گل بهار نموشه، اما باید تلاش بکنیم. باید امید را خلق کنیم. دخترای از من خیلی امیدوارن. خیلی با استعدادن. چرا درس نخوانن؟
Do you feel abandoned by the world? Do you think the women and the girls of Afghanistan have been left behind?
Sure, yes. اگر پشت سر نگذاشتن مگه میتونستن مورد رقم فراموش کنن؟
Well, our thanks to Ian for that preview of his remarkable new ABC News Live special. Again, it's titled The Women Left Behind. It debuts at 8:30 Eastern, 9:30 Pacific, right after Prime. And still ahead here tonight, terrifying moments at a rodeo when a bull charges out of a pen and into the crowd. Also, the new Uber feature you may want to know about before booking your next ride. Plus, the movie ticket sales, well, they still haven't recovered since the start of the pandemic, but a new deal could help boost interest in theaters again. So we take a look at the box office by the numbers. But first, our tweet of the day from the Washington Commanders. A great update here. Running back Brian Robinson Jr. recovering after he was shot when someone tried to rob him over the weekend.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers.
In Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
Here at the White House.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
Here along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go. We made it.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
America is being poisoned with fentanyl, and we don't even know it. Just heard my wife screaming. She told me they had just died.
50 to 100 times more potent than morphine.
Keep breathing, come on. It's poison, it's pure poison.
A few grains of salt worth of fentanyl will kill you.
Just my agency has seized enough to kill the entire country.
ABC News Live presents Poisoned, America's Fentanyl Crisis. The powerful series, streaming free on ABC News Live.
Bring them on.
If only there was a place in the morning to start my day. With a smile, somewhere to help me get in the know. A place as spectacular as, well, me.
I think we might know a place, right, guys?
Bring your friends.
Oh, wait, there is.
Good morning, America.
GMA, 7A, every day. Boom, boom, boom.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Robin. Good morning, America. How are you?
Boom! Now that's how you start your day, people.
Take America's #1 news with you anywhere you go, anytime, free. Download the ABC News app now. Breaking news, exclusives, 24/7. There for you with one touch. The ABC News app. Download it now.
As of today, in a big way, we have inaugurated abcnews.com.
A lot has changed in our world since Peter made that announcement. But what hasn't changed is the commitment to groundbreaking reporting and innovation at abcnews.com. And here's to everything ahead.
And welcome back. Sitting down with a bucket of popcorn and soda at the movie theater, it used to be a really popular activity, but the industry has been hard hit by the pandemic, and we're taking a look at the box office and a deal that could boost attendance by the numbers. So more than $4 billion in ticket sales have been reported in the first 7 months of this year, according to the website Box Office Mojo. And while that is up from last year, it's still about 30% decrease from the nearly $7 billion earned during the same period in 2019. Now, this summer's box office brought in more than $3 billion of this year's earnings, thanks to films like Top Gun Maverick, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and Minions: Rise of Gru. And this summer's July was actually the best month since the pandemic started, with more than $1 billion at the box office. But a poor showing last weekend could be a really bad sign for momentum. $7 million is all the horror thriller The Invitation brought in for its debut, topping the worst weekend at this year's summer box office. Also in its first weekend, a $2.8 million debut is all the Idris Elba and Tilda Swinton film 3,000 Years of Longing brought in. But theaters are hoping to turn this around. More than 30,000 screens in 3,000 theaters will be offering a major discount this upcoming weekend for National Cinema Day. Mark it on your calendar. Movie tickets will only be $3 for every showing in every format. It's one day only. It's this Saturday, September 3rd. You can actually start buying tickets for National Cinema Day right now. Just check with your local theater to see if it's participating. That's a good deal. Well, we have a lot to get to here tonight on Prime. A groundswell of support from around the world for a news anchor who lost her job, the alleged controversy behind her dismissal. And it's an unexpected consequence of the war in Ukraine. The in-demand crop U.S. farmers are now producing. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
With so much at stake in our world right now, we wanted to thank you for your trust and for making ABC News America's #1 news.
And thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Now streaming on ABC News Live 2020. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues, The Hunt. True crime 2020. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
National parks are incredibly safe places. A crime will happen.
Hey, my wife had fallen. She's in really critical condition.
At that time, I thought it was just a tragic accident.
There's still a lot of questions we need to ask.
There were small things that didn't totally add up.
This is 2 lives for Harold that have died now. I was shocked. Something's not right.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know,
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it? Feel smarter,
feel better.
feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart they did this.
It's the time of suspicion. The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
America's #1 news, ABC News. Most watched, most trusted, and streaming live to you anytime, anywhere, and free. This is ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news, free to you 24/7. Watch America's #1 news whenever you want it, wherever you are, anytime. ABC News Live, streaming live and free on all platforms.
People in Jackson, Mississippi are being told to expect little or no water for an undetermined amount of time. And the lieutenant governor says, our understanding is the water and sewer system serving 250,000 citizens of the state and numerous businesses is at the brink of collapsing. The warnings come after a pump at the city's troubled water treatment facility was damaged. The governor says he was told last week that a failure was possible.
It was a near certainty that Jackson would fail to produce running water sometime in the next several weeks or months. Unfortunately, that failure appears to have begun today.
Jackson residents have been under boil water notices since last month when water samples found harmful contaminant levels.
Texas health officials have confirmed the death of a patient with monkey pox, but the cause of the patient's death is still under investigation. State health officials say that the adult patient from Harris County tested positive for monkey pox, but they note that the patient also had other underlying health conditions at the time of their death. The CDC is working to learn what role the virus may have played in the patient's death. The agency says the deaths from monkeypox are rare and most people who get the disease do survive.
The battle between Twitter and Elon Musk heating up with separate SEC regulatory filings over Musk's attempts to back out of his offer to buy the social media platform. The filings center around Twitter's fired head of security turned whistleblower.
A new safety feature is being rolled out for the Uber app. Riders who feel like they're in trouble will be able to send a text to 911 straight from the app. The message will automatically include information like the vehicle description and location.
Growing support for an ousted gray-haired news anchor suddenly dismissed from her job.
Hello, everyone.
Lisa Laflamme, anchor of one of Canada's most watched newscasts and known across the country for decades, saying goodbye on Twitter, explaining her employer, Bell Media, ended her contract after 35 years. Her dismissal sparking a public backlash with allegations of age and gender discrimination.
I was blindsided.
Flamme's Twitter message makes no discrimination claim, but an open letter to Bell Media signed by several prominent Canadians, including singers Anne Murray and Sarah McLachlan, reading, her dismissal appears to be an egregious act of revenge, tainted by ageism, sexism, and misogyny. Wendy's changing the red hair of its iconic logo to gray with the caption, "Because a star is a star regardless of hair color." Dove launching a campaign with the hashtag Keep the Gray. And Sports Illustrated touting its May cover girl, the gray-haired mother of billionaire Elon Musk. And now Bell Media says its vice president of news, Michael Melling, is on leave pending the outcome of an investigation.
A rodeo in Florida turned into an audience participation event when a bull broke out of its holding pen. This happened at the Florida State Fair over the weekend. Eyewitnesses say, look at this. The staff was attempting to rearrange two bulls into their gates when one squeezed out and just ran loose. A cowboy on a horse eventually able to lasso the bull and pull it back from the crowd. The bull was then returned to a holding pen, and despite all of that drama, no one was hurt.
And also tonight, a Duke University volleyball player is demanding answers after she says a spectator targeted her with racist taunts during a match that happened in Utah. And as ABC's Janae Norman reports, the athlete says that she's hoping this can be a teachable moment off the court.
Richardson again fires that one.
New fallout from the volleyball court.
Well, at first, it was kind of like did I hear that right? Like, I didn't really believe it.
Duke sophomore Rachel Richardson says she and her black teammates were targeted with racial slurs and threats during their game against rival BYU over the weekend.
The next time I went back to serve, I was like, okay, yep, I definitely heard that right. I immediately just told one of my most trusted teammates, and I was like, I just heard someone use a racial slur, to address me, essentially.
Richardson taking to Twitter saying the heckling lasted for the entire match, and when it turned to threats, they began to feel unsafe. She says both the officials and BYU coaching staff were made aware of the incident during the game, but failed to take the necessary steps to stop the unacceptable behavior and create a safe environment.
My coaches and my teammates, they responded immediately to the best of their ability, because in that moment, I was like, they're doing something on my behalf.
BYU confirming that the fan accused of launching those attacks is not a student and that they are now permanently banned by BYU.
Even if, as they say, it wasn't a student who was doing this, there were students nearby. And so the fact that they didn't know what to do in the moment to call him out or to let him know that's not accepted here, you need to stop. That's not wanted here. It's a level of ignorance. And so if there's a lack of knowledge on racism and how to deal with it, that's how you have things like this continue to happen.
The next night, the BYU athletic director with strong words for their supporters.
Cheer them on as loud as you can, but do not cross the line where you would hurt or harm anyone in any way.
Richardson has thanked him for his support and says he's been at the forefront of making sure his athletes get the proper education and training to handle any similar encounter effectively. Richardson's father says although she's receiving overwhelming support, there's need for more action and accountability.
So if you're standing in that crowd and someone is doing that next to you, what is progress? Progress is someone saying, hey, stop that.
For Rachel, she calls the incident an opportunity for herself and for others.
I'm not the first person. I'm not the last person. This isn't an isolated incident. It's an opportunity for not just me, but for anyone who has an opinion, anyone who has a voice, to decide that it should be the last time.
And our thanks to Jane Norman for that report. Also tonight, we turn now to an unexpected outcome from the war in Ukraine. Despite a deal with Russia to unblock the ports, Ukraine's grain exports, they're still down nearly 50% from last year. And Russia's invasion is disrupting their ability to transport their key agricultural products, which includes sunflower oil, for which they were the world's top exporter. And that disruption is building new pressures as well as new opportunities for some small farmers that are here in the United States to ramp up local production of sunflower oil. So ABC's M. Nguyen traveled to South Dakota to see the beauty, the necessity, and the rising demand for this valuable crop.
Millions of vibrant sunflowers at peak bloom, packed into the fields of Gettysburg, South Dakota, all facing their source of warmth.
This is the best time to be in South Dakota.
This sea of gold, tended by fourth-generation farmer Treg Cronin, whose family has been farming the area since 1907.
It just doesn't get any prettier than this.
Sought-after sunflowers, producing products from sunflower oil to peanut butter substitutes to the common seasoned snack, all rising in popularity mostly for their health benefits.
The health food side of the market has pushed for a higher oleic content in that sunflower oil.
Kevin Buxa, who sells Cronin's crops to major food processors, says sunflowers are in high demand for being low in saturated fats and higher in oleic content, a healthy fatty acid that helps prevent heart disease and reduce cholesterol.
You're creating an oil that the healthy food side of the market wants. So it's more of a premium product today than it was 30 years ago.
But global forces are also having an impact. Buxa says prices for these products have gone up in the last year, driven higher by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Ukraine, the world's #1 exporter of sunflower oil, has suffered interrupted shipments by Russia since the start of the war, sending cooking oil prices surging globally. The cost of sunflower oil has been no exception, up 40% from February to April, according to the International Food Policy Research Institute. Cronin noticed the sudden uptick in demand for sunflowers, which are also Ukraine's national flower, and that shortage has provided an opportunity for farmers in the U.S. like him.
We wish the best for the farmers, the exporters in Ukraine as much as anyone, and it's such a relatively small market that the impact has been felt greatly, especially in our area in the Central Dakotas.
Despite droughts in South Dakota, made worse by climate change, sunflowers are known for their ability to conserve water and survive in extreme heat. It's one of the reasons why Cronin continues to expand his sunflower acreage.
We planted about 1,400 acres of sunflowers this year, which is up about 400 from last year.
The nation's sunflower acreage is now at its highest in half a decade, with 85% of the country's bright crop produced in North and South Dakota as well as Minnesota. But Cronin has concerns. In 2019, excessive moisture brought a whole host of disease upon his sunflowers.
That was one of the worst sunflower crops we've had in at least 10 years. So if anything, the effects of climate change, if we've felt them, has been beneficial for sunflowers.
Cronin says he's already profited around 3 times more on sunflowers this year than he did 3 years ago. The surge has helped with new equipment purchases, crop protection, and a better quality of life for him and his community.
I just hope the prices stay high enough to where we can keep producing the amount that the market wants.
He says though he's not sure how long this sunflower boost will last, it's already making a lasting impact.
Over the last several generations, my grandfather, great-grandfather, my dad, my uncle, we've slowly built our operation to what it is today. It's a palette Mother Nature provides us farmers that you don't get to see in very many other places, so we're pretty lucky.
And that is beautiful stuff. And our thanks to Emlyn for that. Now, how often do you Zoom? More than 2 years into the pandemic, many of us are still taking these meetings virtually, and you might be surprised to see a lot of people, myself included, who need help on their backgrounds. So Alex Perche got some pointers from the pros, so to speak, whose rating system has taken the internet by storm.
Hi, it's Jimmy. It's become an online phenomenon in the midst of the pandemic.
New viral Twitter account called Room Raider.
More than 2 years later, Americans still don't know how to set up their Zoom backgrounds, perhaps myself included.
I think that we really tried hard to make it easy for anybody to do.
Well, Jesse, while I have you here, and I recognize that this is going to be harsh, but you see what I'm starting with.
Okay, it is very hostagey in the background. The lamps are not matching and askew, I believe. So I would say if we didn't like you and know you, it would probably be a 2 or a 3.
Jesse Beret and Claude Taylor have been doling out tips since the start of the pandemic.
We were watching cable news way too much, and we're seeing all the correspondents, you know, in their home environments. And we started making commentary to ourselves. So I just said, you know, let's make a Twitter account. Let's call it Room Raider.
The pair says their formula is simple. Give the space a rating on a scale of 1 to 10. Add some constructive criticism, sprinkle in some snark, and voila, a virtual goldmine that's captivated the country. They've rated celebrities, senators, even heads of state. Some of their ratings, great. ABC's very own John Carl got a 10 out of 10.
Getting a 10 out of 10 of Room Raider, I mean, that's, you know, it's not quite like winning a Pulitzer, but, you know, it's up there somewhere, isn't it?
Other ratings, well, left room to grow. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez earning this 1 out of 10, but later redeeming herself with a 9, getting some compliments on the bookshelf. Well curated, good spacing.
The lighting, the camera height, like, you know, we call it the nostril view when the camera is too low and it's looking right up the nostrils.
Room Raider became a welcome laugh in the midst of the pandemic. They were also able to help those looking for work.
I remember just getting one message from a woman who said that her husband had been unemployed for 11 months and how she used the setup techniques. And she said her husband had a great online interview and got the job.
That's why the couple wrote a book, How to Zoom Your Room. And the timing is perfect because selfishly, I could use the help.
Well, listen, I know you're in D.C. Would love your expertise if you're willing to stop by and help this out.
I mean, I'm free this afternoon. I could probably be there in under an hour.
That would be amazing.
About an hour later, Claude, how you doing?
Hey, how are you?
I'm well. Thanks for making the trip. Claude showed up with a suitcase full of props ready to transform my space.
Well, the room needs it, so I appreciate it. Let me give you a hand here.
All right.
The infamous 3 out of 10?
Yep.
You think we can transform this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've got a couple different options we'll look at here.
Okay.
First up, using the couch.
You're here in what we call the couch view. With your background, with your lovely Parisian art, you're simply seated too low, and frankly, it doesn't present you very well.
So we changed some things. We added some greenery, placed a chair in front of the couch, and moved a lamp into the scene.
We've moved away from the couch, created some space, and that gives you a better perspective on the artwork and on the overall setup.
Next, the bookcase.
This one took a little bit more work than the last one.
It did. We have demonstrated what we call an author's setup. So we have one copy.
And yeah, that's key, just the one copy.
One copy, not multiple copies, no stacks of books. Show one copy of your book cover forward.
Last up, transforming the office setup.
Okay. For this setup, put me to work.
Take the printer and just lift it up and just set it over here. We're going to move the lamp over here. And I'm going to move the stapler. We don't need 3 remotes in the shot. Let's do some books. We need to find a light bulb. Maybe clock here.
Okay.
See right there, that's pretty much what we would call a 10.
And then it was time to appeal my original score.
Let's call Jessie.
We zoomed back in with Jessie to get her reaction to my new space.
It doesn't even look like the same room.
Can we get a new rating?
Yes, absolutely. You have a plant and a succulent, you have art, the lamp is turned on, and you have a pineapple, which of course is at least a point. So yes, it is a legit real 10.
Redemption.
Well done.
The pandemic has launched a new era of Zoom, opening a window to our personal lives. Thanks to Room Raiders' tips, I was able to transform my empty office. Sometimes it just takes an open mind and maybe a nice plant for anyone to earn a 10 out of 10.
Alex, I love that. When in doubt, add a pineapple. Thank you so much for that. Before we go here, we have the image of the day. It's in Cape Canaveral, Florida, where NASA's Artemis 1 rocket sits there on a launch pad at the Kennedy Space Center. The rocket is now set to take off Saturday. The launch window opening just after 2:15 p.m. local time. The original launch was scrubbed yesterday after an issue was thought to be found with one of the rocket's 4 engines, but NASA now believes it may have been a sensor malfunction. Well, that's our show for this hour. Please stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Kana Whitworth. Thank you so much for streaming with us. Coming up in the next hour, we're staying on top of a few things here, starting with this. It stretches more than 1,400 miles and provides water to more than 40 million people, but the Colorado River is shrinking. National Geographic's Alejandra Baranda tells us why she believes this is a climate reckoning. Also, the new high-definition video revealing previously unseen details in the Titanic wreckage.
America's #1 news, ABC News. Most watched, most trusted, and streaming live to you anytime, anywhere, and free. This is ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news, free to you 24/7. Watch America's #1 news whenever you want it, wherever you are, anytime. ABC News Live, streaming live and free on all platforms. Take America's #1 news with you, anywhere you go, anytime, free. Download the ABC News app now. Breaking news, exclusives, 24/7, there for you with one touch. The ABC News app. Download it now.
With so much at stake in our world right now, we wanted to thank you for your trust and for making ABC News America's #1 news.
And thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
He thought he was God.
He's now one of the most vilified men in the world. He is the everyman. Zelensky is the Tom Hanks of Ukraine.
The fact that a little nice Jewish boy is 5'7" is showing up this KGB agent in the Kremlin.
What do you say to Americans who see Russia and you not only as a rival,
but an unfriendly adversary.
Two men at war.
Which Vladimir will take over? The world is not going to be the same.
Amber Rose Isaac was the love of my life.
She went into the hospital.
And then I just see Shamani as... She was as good as dead as soon as she walked into that hospital.
Black women are 4 times more likely to die than their white counterparts with the same symptoms.
I can't let Amber be another statistic. We need to make sure that this doesn't happen to anyone else.
This fight is not over.
We're doing this together, man.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kana Whitworth in for Lindsay Davis, and we're here in Los Angeles tonight. Thank you so much for streaming with us. Now, we're monitoring several developments here at ABC News at this hour, starting with COVID-19 funding drying up and no fresh cash infusion from Congress. The government will stop taking orders online for those free COVID tests as of Friday. So if you haven't already gotten 3 rounds of free rapid tests, you have until Friday to make an order. Former Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev has died. Gorbachev was the last leader of the Soviet Union before it dissolved. He not only helped end the Cold War, but also the threat of nuclear war. Herculean moves that earned him the Nobel Peace Prize. He was 91 years old. And for the first time ever, we are now able to see video in 8K of the rapidly decaying Titanic. Now, this is the first of its kind footage, and it's very dramatic evidence of the decomposition that we're seeing there, where some of the Titanic's rails have collapsed and fallen away from the ship. The video will help with the identification of nearby species, and archaeologists will be able to document elements of the wreck and the debris field in much greater detail now. Also tonight, Jackson's water system. It's been plagued with problems for years. In fact, a boil water notice was actually in effect since last month. But the recent flooding dropped water pressure to a trickle. And what's coming out of the taps throughout the entire city may be contaminated. Well, now the capital of the state of Mississippi is in an emergency, and officials don't know when they will have running water again. Our Trevor Alt is on the ground there in Jackson for us tonight.
Tonight, families in Mississippi's capital city are scrambling for the most basic human necessity, clean water. Overnight, Governor Tate Reeves announcing a key water treatment plant is on the verge of total collapse.
It means the city cannot produce enough water to fight fires, to reliably flush toilets, and to meet other critical needs.
Today, cars lining up for hours at water distribution sites. We met Cora Williams. She told us she needs water for herself and her 2 grandchildren.
Can you keep living like this?
No.
What do you want them to do?
Fix it. Fix everything. There's water, fix the streets, everything. They need to fix it.
Jackson residents have been under boil water notices since last month, when water samples found harmful contaminant levels. Water emergency on the heels of last week's flash flood emergency, parts of the Jackson area receiving historic rainfall.
This is a set of accumulated problems based on deferred maintenance that has not taken place over decades.
And Trevor Alt is joining us now. So, Trevor, you're there at a water distribution center right now. What's happening?
Well, Kana, essentially we just keep watching these lines grow larger and larger. So this distribution site is filling up with people here. It's a parking lot basically of a shopping center, but it snakes around through. There's several different lines that's a little disorganized, and then it goes out on the streets and stretches as far as you can see. And here they're waiting on water that's now more than a half hour late. The one we were at earlier, extremely well organized. They had 600 cases of water. They gave out 1 per vehicle. It took them an hour and a half to go all the way through. And when they ran out, you could still see in the distance a line of cars about a half a mile long. It is impossible to overstate the need for water right now in Jackson. Kana.
Wow, that means people are waiting for water and not getting it in some cases. Trevor, thanks to you. Yeah. And next to the latest round of strong storms, they're firing up tonight, targeting millions in the Northeast with heavy rain and high winds after slamming the Midwest. Senior meteorologist Rob Marciano is tracking it all for us. Hey, Rob.
Hey, Kana, this has proved to be a very dangerous line of storms. We saw yesterday fatalities with us, over 200 damaging storm reports, and still very, very potent tonight. The winds are picking up here around New York City, and upstate New York on the radar is a bit of a mess. You can see it here. Lots of storms from central New York, Ithaca, east towards the Capital District, and eastern Pennsylvania, heading across the Delaware into New Jersey as well. as it crosses the I-95 corridor later on this evening and tonight. New York up through Bridgeport, Hartford. It will weaken eventually into Boston, but overnight tonight we could see 50, 60 mile-per-hour winds with this line of storms. Much more quiet and less humid tomorrow. Meanwhile, in the west, beginning tomorrow, excessive heat warnings and watches up and down California. We could see some record highs, not just tomorrow, but it looks like this heat wave is going to be a dangerous one and a long one. Looks to be lasting through the holiday weekend. All right, we're getting into primetime hurricane season. As you know, it's been very, very quiet the past 2 months. Is that streak going to continue? Unlikely. 80% chance of that storm in the central Atlantic, and this one coming off Africa has a decent chance of developing into tropical cyclone, potentially a named storm. But at this point, neither one of those looks to be making a line towards the U.S. Let's hope our luck continues as we head into September. Kana?
Okay, Rob, our thanks to you. Now tonight, a Texas man diagnosed with monkeypox has died, potentially marking the first monkeypox-related death in the United States. Now, state officials add that the man was severely immunocompromised. But now, with more than 18,000 reported cases in the country, where do we stand on vaccines, and who should be getting one? Our Maria Villarreal reports.
Tonight, the first reported death of an American with monkeypox. Officials say the patient was a severely immunocompromised adult who died at a Houston area hospital.
This patient also had underlying health conditions and had a number of things going on, and I think that additional investigation is needed to know what role monkeypox may or may not have played in their deaths.
The CDC today stressing that death from monkeypox is rare. Of the nearly 50,000 cases around the world, just 15 have been fatal. The vast majority of U.S. infections have been in men who have sex with other men, but at least 31 children have also contracted monkeypox, including an infant who was exposed to the virus by a family member and treated at a Seattle hospital.
The main thing that the patient was experiencing was the rash and complications of the rash.
And our thanks to Maria for that story. We go overseas now, specifically to the Arabian Sea, where the U.S. Navy reports that they caught an Iranian military ship trying to make off with a high-tech U.S. maritime drone in the middle of the night. So how did the U.S. Fifth Fleet step in to stop them? Here's ABC's chief global affairs anchor, Martha Raddatz.
The Iranian military vessel had the American drone in its clutches, latching on and towing it through the waters of the Arabian Gulf. The captured Sea Drone Explorer is an unarmed, unmanned vessel equipped with sensors, radar, and cameras to collect data. And once the U.S. Navy saw Iran was trying to steal it, their response was quick. The USS Thunderbolt, you can see it here, was operating nearby and quickly moved in, approaching the Iranian ship, nearly pulling up alongside it. The standoff lasted hours until the Iranians finally disconnected the tow line, releasing the drone. Tonight, the Navy calling Iran's actions flagrant and unwarranted.
And our thanks to Martha Raddatz. Now, also, it is day 2 of this Ukrainian counteroffensive, and President Zelensky is giving the Russians 2 choices. He says, flee or surrender. Meanwhile, families living near a massive nuclear power plant continue to evacuate. ABC's Tom Sufi-Baraj has the latest from Zaporizhzhia.
Tonight, dramatic new images of smoke rising over southern Ukraine. Videos circulating online illustrating this major new counteroffensive. Ukrainian forces stepping up strikes on Russian targets across Kherson, a key city in the Ukrainians' new push to recapture Russian-occupied territory. Tonight, President Zelensky with a new message for the Russians, saying this is Ukrainian land, adding occupiers can flee or surrender. We leave them no other options. The fighting sparking a new exodus, families desperate to escape.
We're at the main evacuation centre in Ukrainian-controlled territory, not far from Kherson. Many of these families have left this morning. They say the fighting was getting louder, their fear more intense, and they had to get out.
We met Zhenya and Olya, fleeing Kherson with their 3 kids.
You feared for your lives? You wanted to get out?
Well, I didn't fear for my life, but I really fear about life of my children.
Zelensky today meeting 2 U.S. senators, Democrat Amy Klobuchar and Republican Rob Portman, who vowed continued US support. And the president also face-to-face with a team of nuclear experts from the UN. They will now try and reach that nuclear power plant in Zaporizhia.
And our thanks to Tom tonight. And now to the record-breaking drought in Europe and what it's revealing. Water levels across much of the continent are the lowest that they have been in centuries, and historical artifacts once submerged are now being uncovered. ABC's James Longman has details.
Europe's summer months may be coming to an end, but in central Spain, the heat is still on, and it's revealed an ancient treasure. The Dolmen of Guadalperal is a prehistoric tomb thought to be as much as 7,000 years old. This Spanish Stonehenge should be submerged under this reservoir, but the waters here have retreated so much that the structure has been entirely exposed.
Bueno, James, aquí estamos justo en lo que sería la cámara sepulcral.
So there was a large corridor that came down. We're standing in the middle of what would have been the tomb, and there were 3 circles of stones that surrounded it.
The area was flooded in the 1960s to create this reservoir. This is only the 4th time they've been visible.
Este es el acceso.
So this is the main stone at the front of the tomb, and it's anthropomorphic, so it's supposed to be in the shape of a human being. And on the front is a serpent, and that is thought it was on all kinds of tombs.
An important piece of history, but also a stark sign of a warming climate and how serious Europe's drought has become.
That's just incredible. Our thanks to James Longman. We have all seen the headlines. The record-breaking extreme weather felt around the world. The western United States, just one of the many areas feeling the burden of our climate crisis, an issue that I have covered on the ground extensively. And now for an in-depth look at the Colorado River, I want to bring in Alejandra Barunda, a National Geographic environment writer whose latest work features the shrinking river basin and its far-reaching impact. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And so for those who don't know, the Colorado River stretches over 1,400 miles. It provides water to more than 40 million people while irrigating more than 5 million acres of agriculture. You describe what's taking place there on the Colorado River Basin as a climate reckoning. Describe that.
Yeah, there's this really incredible ongoing drought across the West and the Southwest that has actually been going on in waxing and waning for over 20 years now. And it's truly historic. Scientists have found out that it's the worst 22-year stretch of drought in at least the last 1,200 years, made about 40% worse by climate change. And that drought, it can't help but have just enormous effects on the people and ecosystems across the region, especially, like you were saying, the 40 million people who use its water and everyone who eats the food that comes from the region that's irrigated by Colorado River water. And so things have gotten so dire in the last couple years, and right now in particular, that the 7 states in Mexico that rely on the Colorado River water are trying really hard to figure out a plan for how to use a lot less of it in the future.
Well, and it's a scary thought. So in your opinion, and in the work that you've done, what is the worst case scenario for the Colorado River?
I mean, I think we're basically in it. This was a position that no one wanted to get to, where Lakes Mead and Powell, the 2 main reservoirs on the river, are at historically low levels. They're about 25-ish% full right now, which is down from, nearly full about a decade ago. So earlier this year, the Bureau of Reclamation, the federal government, asked the 7 states along the river to cut about 2 to 4 million acre feet, which is about 1/3 as much water currently goes down the river every year, from their budgets. So that's a really big ask. That is unprecedented. That's asking for states to do way more than they ever even kind of thought they would have to in the past, but that's just how bad the drought has gotten.
Right, this goes beyond agriculture. This goes to looking at our municipal water use as well. In your opinion, what is the best case scenario?
I mean, right now, those 7 states and the federal government and a lot of other people who are interested in this part of the world are working really hard to figure out a way to make an equitable deal, to make a deal that feels fair for everyone, but that will help stabilize the water and stabilize the river so that we can continue to have water running through the taps and to have agriculture survive and thrive in this part of the world. And so I think everyone's just really hoping right now that there's a deal that can be made. And it's going to require, kind of like you were saying, really big sacrifices across the board.
Right, and for a little glimpse of hope, I want to share this with you. I met with some ranchers at the headwaters of the Colorado River, and they are making very dramatic efforts to keep this river healthy and to keep it flowing. So take a look.
As part of one of the largest restoration efforts on the Upper Basin, you have installed 5 of these riffles right there along a 12-mile stretch?
That is correct. Raising the water table, focusing on the health of the Colorado River, and allowing irrigation for productive, profitable agriculture. It is this region's adaptation to climate change.
So when you hear something like that and you see them at the headwaters, that's just one thing that's happening. So this is going to be a piecemeal solution effort where individual farmers, city dwellers, tribal nations have to come together to ensure the future of this river. Do you see that happening?
I hope so. I've talked to a lot of folks who, no one wants this to fail, right? Like everyone wants this successful negotiation and to figure out a way to make this better. Because if it doesn't work, it's just, it's a disaster for everyone. So I've heard a lot of encouraging things from people in the know, but I know that there's a lot that's going to be really painful for people to deal with in any negotiated outcome. It's just, this is a really tough problem to deal with. And it's going to take people like that, like everyone coming up with small solutions, as well as people really coming at this from the big end, the state governments kind of making some concessions.
Right, exactly. We all have to do our own part. Alejandra Barunda, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for your work.
Yeah, thank you. It was really good to talk.
And still to come here tonight, the new appeal from the United Nations as Pakistan struggles with devastating and deadly flooding. And the U.S. Constitution has been amended in the past, but there's a debate over how far it should go. A former senator tells us why his new book claims some are now aiming to rewrite the Constitution.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
in Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
Here at the White House.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
Here along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go. We made it.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7 straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Bring them on.
If only there was a place in the morning to start my day. With a smile, somewhere to help me get in the know. A place as spectacular as, well, me.
I think we might know a place, right, guys?
Bring your friends.
Oh, wait, there is.
Good morning, America.
GMA, 7A, every day. Boom, boom, boom. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Robin. Good morning, America. How are you?
Boom. Now that's how you start your day, people.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
How cute.
Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
As of today, in a big way, we have inaugurated abcnews.com.
A lot has changed in our world since Peter made that announcement. But what hasn't changed is the commitment to groundbreaking reporting and innovation at abcnews.com. And here's to everything ahead.
This is ABC News Live Prime.
Thanks so much for streaming with us.
Live reporting, breaking news, exclusives, award-winning, powerful, eye-opening. ABC News Live Prime with Lindsay Davis, streaming weeknights.
And welcome back. We are tracking several headlines from around the world. The United Nations and Pakistan issued an appeal for $160 million in emergency funding to help millions affected by record-breaking floods that have killed more than 1,100 people. The United States has also announced they will provide an additional $30 million in humanitarian assistance to support the people affected by the severe flooding in Pakistan, resulting from heavy monsoon rains and mudslides since mid-June. And hundreds of Haitians took to the streets of the Caribbean country's capital in Port-au-Prince to protest growing crime and soaring consumer prices. Piles of tires burned on street barricades as people gathered at gas stations, trying desperately to fill jugs with fuel. Protesters denounced the expensive cost of living and the fuel prices by the manipulation of the bourgeoisie. And the highest brick tower in the world had a special set of visitors recently as members of the Red Bull skydive team whizzed past the picturesque structure in Germany. That's amazing. Built more than 500 years ago, the 426-foot-high steeple of St. Martin's Church was buzzed by Miles Dasher, who says he got close enough in his wingsuit to see every brick. While the U.S. Constitution provides the foundation of our nation's democracy, its laws have been amended to reflect the changing landscape of our country. But in a new book, former Senator Russ Feingold discusses an effort from far-right activists he says are aiming to rewrite the Constitution. In The Constitution in Jeopardy, an unprecedented effort to rewrite our fundamental law and what we can do about it, Feingold explains the potential threat and how rewriting the Constitution could change the trajectory of our democracy. Senator Feingold, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, now a central theme in your book here is focused on Article 5. So this allows Congress to make amendments to the Constitution, but you make the case here that a growing group of far-right activists across the country want to essentially exploit another facet of Article 5, which is the convention provision. So tell us what this provision is and why you think it poses a threat.
Well, my co-author, Peter Prindiville, and I have been studying this very closely for a couple of years, and we see that, of course, in Article 5 of the Constitution, it says that if 2/3 of both houses of the Congress propose a constitutional amendment and 3/4 of the states ratify it, that can create a constitutional amendment. That's the only way it's ever been done. But there's another provision there that allows 2/3 of the states to apply for a constitutional convention. And if they do, Congress has to call it. And our concern is that the far-right groups realize that there would be no limitation on what could be discussed and considered at a convention like that. So they could really undo our Constitution. And there's a growing movement to do it on the far right, and it's time to blow the whistle on it and have people realize it.
Well, so on that note, you said in your book that this constitutional convention could in fact set in motion attempts to fundamentally alter our system of government. You went on to say, quote, every contentious political and social issue could be on the table. But I mean, I have to ask, how realistic do you think that scenario is?
Unfortunately, it's very realistic. Peter and I have studied very closely the fact that they are actually doing model conventions now. They are preparing, they are identifying the people that would be the delegates, and they have an agenda that is pretty clear. They want to really gut the ability of the federal government potentially to protect the environment, to protect civil rights laws, to protect voting rights. They could ban abortion in the Constitution. Basically, they could do almost anything, and by some counts, they're close to the 34 states. We think they're using phony numbers to come up with that. But a new Congress might decide we're just going to count it this way. So we think it's an imminent threat, and it would be foolish for people who care about our Constitution to not realize that this is something that could really happen and could be worse than January 6th, worse than what's happened with the Supreme Court. It could be the worst thing yet.
And while you call it a threat, the argument from these far-right groups, though, is that their proposals would limit the power and the jurisdiction of the federal government, and that they would be putting forward procedural amendments, things that wouldn't really garner any headlines. But again, you say perhaps they have a more severe agenda and consequences?
No, there's no doubt they have a more severe agenda. Rick Santorum, the former senator and presidential candidate, has said it's like having a live weapon and you just need to pull the pin on it. So their agenda is not something mild. They may put it in mild terms, but what they're going to try to do is make it so the federal government can't protect the environment, that the federal government can't stand up, protect reproductive rights of women, that they're going to make sure the Voting Rights Act is gutted even further. And so it's in their writings, it's in their statements, it's very clear. In fact, they even want to make it, some of them, that if 30 states say they don't like an act of Congress, they can just override an act of Congress.
Well, it has been, though, several decades since the last amendment to the Constitution. In fact, only 27 amendments out of the 11,000 proposals to Congress have even been ratified. And while this convention process would make that easier to do, have you found any potential benefits to pursuing amendments, especially in such a divided nation right now, where many states disagree with the federal government's decisions?
Yeah, we call this the Constitution in jeopardy for two reasons. One is this far-right movement to rewrite the Constitution, take us back to the 18th century. But the other is we do need amendments, but we need to amend it in a different way. We need to change Article 5 so that the people, we the people, by a majority vote or by majority votes in the states, make the changes.
So while you do support some change, are there any specific amendments that you think could actually garner the support needed and that would perhaps benefit our democracy?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Congress once almost passed the elimination of the Electoral College in the 1960s. I think that's a pretty popular thing. I think there'd be other things that would be popular, but that's not what's going to come out of this convention if these folks on the right have their way. What's going to come out of it is a gutting of the ability of this country to protect itself, and it's going to be a very hard result for the diverse people who live here in the 21st century. That can't be allowed.
Okay, well, former Senator Russ Feingold, our thanks to you for taking the time to be with us tonight.
Thanks so much.
And The Constitution in Jeopardy is available where books are sold. And still to come here tonight, after a devastating loss, the life-changing gift 4 siblings are now receiving.
Right now, with so much at stake, Sunday mornings, this is the place. Taking on all the tough questions. Straightforward reporting. No spin, no hype, no bull. Thank you for making ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos the #1 Sunday morning news show versus the competition.
Welcome to This Week.
Take America's #1 news with you, anywhere you go, anytime, free. Download the ABC News app now. Breaking news, exclusives, 24/7. There for you with one touch. The ABC News app. Download it now. This is ABC News Live Prime.
Thanks so much for streaming with us.
Live reporting, breaking news, exclusives, award-winning, powerful, eye-opening. ABC News Live Prime with Lindsay Davis. Streaming weeknights.
Ready for a little GMA-ish promo? Okay, here we go. GMA 7A every day with Robin, George, and Michael. That's how you start the day. Boom!
America's #1 news, ABC News. Most watched, most trusted, and streaming live to you anytime, anywhere, and free. This is ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news, free to you 24/7. Watch America's #1 news whenever you want it, wherever you are, anytime. ABC News Live, streaming live and free on all platforms.
And finally tonight, a Gold Star family lost their father in war as he served our country in Afghanistan. And a few years later, tragedy struck them again. Now 4 siblings are getting a gift that will change their lives. Reporter Wendy Lane from our partner station WFTS in Tampa Bay has their story in our local lowdown.
It was a hero's welcome home for the family of a hero who never made it home. Nazara Montrond lost her father, Army Sergeant Alberto Montrond, in February 2006 to an IED explosion in Afghanistan. And ever since, the family has had to move a lot to afford rent.
We moved every 2 years, if even, and switching schools every 2 years. It was really hard.
Then more tragedy hit. Last year, Nazara's mother passed away, leaving the 22-year-old who works full-time and goes to school full-time to care for her 3 younger siblings alone.
Because of our parents passing, there is a lot of negatives to that, but I don't want that to be the end. There's so much light. There's so much life.
And that light of people coming together is brightening the lives of this Gold Star family with the most incredible gift.
Welcome home.
Home to a brand new 3-bedroom townhome.
Oh, man.
Thanks to Built to Honor, Building Homes for Heroes, and other companies joining forces, the Wesley Chapel home is completely paid for.
Why is this exactly what I would pick out?
Fully furnished and full of gifts.
I got a tablet! Are you for real right now?
And on what just so happened to be their mother's birthday.
She's probably up there crying, jumping up and down, going crazy right now because you guys are taking care of her babies.
And while Sergeant Montrond didn't make it home, thanks to the kindness of others, his children will always have a place to call home.
I can't believe I get to come home to this. Like, this is home.
Welcome home!
I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Wow, and our thanks to Wendy Lane for that beautiful story. And that's our show for tonight. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Kana Whitworth. Thank you for streaming with us.